Hello, and welcome to Cornwall Woman, the place for women who are leading life their own way. The last few months have been a time for reflection, reappraisal, activism, and making our own entertainment. And in this episode, I'm talking to someone who's been tackling all of that and more. Rebecca Mordan is an actor, director and activist. She's the artistic director of her proudly feminist theatre company, Scary Little Girls, which celebrates and elevates the unsung heroines of history. And she thinks that Cornwall's vibrant network of outdoor theatre making will see us leading the way in the country's return to live theatre.
Their sort of use of language, of small amounts of speech to tell huge stories and convey massive emotions, to really hit you in the feels. I think that's really, really interesting as well. And you combine that with our kind of physical theatre and our approach to outdoor space, which I think is so timely. I feel in a way we might be one of the first regions to kind of recover or redefine what theatre means post kind of COVID.
Rebecca hasn't stopped through lockdown, and as the host of the glamorous and enlightening Salon de la Vie, she provides an online showcase of Wonder Women. And on top of that, she's saving for the nation the enthralling stories of the women of Greenham Common. I met her in the garden of her home in Falmouth on a hot sunny day, underneath a creaky parasol. Rebecca Mordan, welcome to Cornwall Woman.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you for welcoming me into your beautiful home in Falmouth. We're so lucky, it's a lovely day and we're sitting in the garden, looking out over the Fal, and we have to have the umbrella up, that's the creaking, because it's a really hot day.
Yeah, it's sunny.
Yeah.
I'll get burnt otherwise.
But I'm not going to be smug about it anymore. So we're in your lovely home in Falmouth, which has been your home since when?
We moved here just before my 8th birthday. So yeah, I've been here, I'm 44 now, and I live sometimes here, sometimes in London with my partner, and then so probably a third in each place and a third of the time on the road, like in the olden days, like before.
Mm. And do you consider yourself Cornish then, if you've lived here most of your life?
When I'm out and about, in the rest of the country, I always talk about myself as being Cornish. It's such an underrepresented and insanely sort of cultured and unique area of the country. So it just feels like, yeah, exposing Cornwall to other people and getting them to know what an amazing place this is and how amazing the culture and the art and things is down here is really important. But when I'm here, I sort of take a slightly more back seat. I sort of don't want to assume, and because I know there are people who definitely would consider me not Cornish enough. But yeah, I mean, basically, you know, I live here, my heart's here, my work's here. So yeah, I think I hopefully qualify for the podcast.
Mm. So, and were you a scary little girl?
When I was little, do you mean? Was I actually scary? Well, I don't know. It's difficult, isn't it? It's very hard as a woman in a patriarchy, even as a little woman. You adapt yourself, don't you? I think I was much less adapted than lots of little girls because my mum had been a Greenham woman, and so she was very, fired up by radical feminism, and she was very keen on like me having my own voice and my own tiny opinions. And I know there were some people who were like couldn't get a reading on me. Again, mostly men. They were a bit like, she's polite, but she's not automatically deferent, and she's a bit opinionated. Deference, probably not even a word. Deferential. So I think I was a confusing little girl.
So you decided to become an actress? Is that what you wanted to be, or a director? You went to study drama in Bristol.
Yeah, that's right. No, it was really weird. I absolutely always knew that I was going to be an actor, and then I did go. I got into Bristol Old Vic, which felt like a huge accomplishment at the time. So I think I came out kind of ready to form a company as soon as I could, to try and level that playing field in a very small way, the only way that you can, think globally, act locally kind of stuff. And I guess it meant that I then, once you have your own company, then you do whatever job needs to be done. I discovered I could also direct and write. So.
And if there's I don't know if you have a manifesto, but what are the ethics of your company?
We do have like a sort of an official 3-pronged manifesto, and I'm trying to think if I can actually remember it. But it basically is about we always employ more women than men. just again in that thing of that small playing field. The other one is about championing stories or perspectives that are usually obscured or not covered or only told from one version. So kind of challenging the dominant narrative, which tends to be very pale male, or the same story told by somebody who doesn't usually get to have their say in the matter, which is really fun to find those. I love doing that. And then the last thing is really about the community benefits of art. Part of our manifesto is to sort of say, actors actually, our artists work really hard, and they often spend a lot of time and money training themselves to have useful skills. And then if our industry doesn't really employ them, then those skills are kind of wasted, they kind of sat on. So we look for ways in which we can do, to create employment, but also to look for projects where you might take those skills into community events or to the community benefit. So we might work with the Heritage Lottery as much as we might work with the Arts Council, stuff like that. And that in sort of trying to broaden out the way of utilising art and having art be appreciated by the community and of benefit to the community. And then our kind of unofficial manifesto things, I would say, I'm very passionate about, and I'm very honest about trying to have a company that cross-pollinates Cornish work and style with kind of more London-centric. I mean national, but actually the national is quite London-centric. So having those two things be cross-pollinated so that actors can work in both places and pick up all the different skills that you get from working in our main city, but also in working somewhere like Cornwall, which has such like a really... I've toured all over, and I don't know anywhere else that's got regional, distinctive, meaningful theatre practice in the way that Cornwall does. The talent stream is so deep. And I think that's really, really interesting. And because we're so far away, I think it's really important to get that up and out, and to bring interesting stuff back in as well. So I try to do that.
Can you give me some examples of what you mean? What are the characteristics of theatre in Cornwall that you're trying to export?
Well, it's suddenly come really into its own, because I think because we never had any venues. When I was growing up, there were hardly any, and there's never not been a big venue until I was a young adult. We didn't have a hall for Cornwall, and I think that made a virtue of necessity, in that what we do have is all these fantastic outdoor spaces. You've got quarries and you've got amphitheatres and you've also just got like beaches and cliff tops, and that has also lent itself to the way in which we write, and the way in which writing and big stories can be conveyed in quite imagist ways, in like basically with quite sort of frugal amounts of words. And so our writers have become insanely clever, people like Anna Maria Murphy and things, who are just like, so Mercedes Kemp. I mean, their use of language, of small amounts of speech to tell huge stories and convey massive emotions, to really hit you in the feels. I think that's really, really interesting as well. And you combine that with our kind of physical theatre and our approach to outdoor space, which I think is so timely. I feel in a way we might be one of the first regions to kind of recover or redefine what theatre means post kind of COVID.
That's very hopeful.
Yeah, I think we might be one of the ones that can quickest get back on its feet in many ways. And again, when I tour, quite often other areas, programmers, rural touring schemes will say, "Oh, you're from Cornwall. Oh, you'll be great to work with. Everyone we ever get from Cornwall is really up for it. They can do everything. They're cracking on stage, but they can also make their own sets, and they they drive the vans, and they do this, and then they'll bring out the musical instruments, and they do all that." So we are a very self-sufficient region, and that's infused our approach to work, having a richness to it. Why put an actor on stage? We could also put an actor and a drum and some huge pieces of boat. There's a real richness and a readiness about Cornish practice, I think, which is really exciting.
Oh, that makes it sound absolutely wonderful, which it is. And I have to say, I've lived here for 8 years now, and I don't think I've seen so much theatre in my life as I have since I lived here.
Yeah, and it's all really varied, isn't it, as well? So I think it's a really exciting region for this stuff.
And I know it's really important for you that women in particular who come to see your shows come away feeling great as well.
Yeah, so that sort of ties in with my favourite unofficial thing that I try and go by, which is I didn't ever want Scary Little Girls to compromise on quality, and I didn't want us to compromise on message. So I didn't want to do polemics where the art felt a bit shoddy and thrown together, but the message was really important, was really good, was what we want to say. And I equally don't want to make something that's, the funniest or most beautiful thing you've ever seen, but the jokes were punching down. where it was a shortcut because everyone would get that joke. So, and it just takes you a bit longer. You have to think a bit more if you're going to make work that way, I think. And that absolutely comes back to the idea of when people leave a piece of work. I think the world, it's too dangerous for us to be for the world to be run by unhappy people. We're not our best selves when we're miserable. So I'm very interested in work that makes you leave not like when you watch the news and you go, oh, there's no point even trying. It's all so awful. Why would I even bother? You want to make work that makes people go, oh, now I feel these things, I'm going to do this about them. So kind of making work that enacts positive change, I suppose, and gives you permission to be the change you want to see in the world. And then that led me more recently to thinking particularly about how that is for women and what an important space we can create, because we do live in a patriarchy, and there's a million and one ways for all of us to feel rubbish, but then particularly in that 50% of the population to feel rubbish about various things, and for women to feel rubbish about so many things, or just not quite ever optimised. And I noticed that we seemed to attract audience that really loved being in a positive space where there were lots of women. They could see lots of women, there were lots of women on stage. The women didn't all look like each other. No one was the same physical size or colour or shape or age. Like really like you could find yourself in that story, whoever you were. And then I went to see a Lizzo gig. So that's me on a very micro, our work being micro and us being a small company. And then there's this huge star like Lizzo, and I went to see her at Glastonbury last year, which was so good. Basically, she would just say to them, I'm so grateful that you were loving this set, and she was funny with them, and she was wild, and she had all her backing dancers who were all great and all different sizes, and she loved them. But then she'd say, I'm loving this love, we're having a really great time up here, we're all feeling this massive love from you, and I just want to remind you that if you love me like that, then you can love yourself like that. Wow. It's the same. You could see women just stop, women of all ages just stop in their tracks and just cry. And then for the next couple of hours I was wandering by the festival and there were still women, and I'd be like, were you at the Lizzo gig? And they'd be like, I know, it was like the Church of Lizzo, wasn't it amazing? Like, I love myself. It was real. And I suppose what it made me think was, actually, that space for women to feel, just even for a couple of hours, an unconditional love of being themselves as a woman is so rare, because there are so many conditions on all of us. Are we found sexually appealing primarily? And even that, she's way more coded than what do we really look like. It's how much have we complied? What uniform are we wearing for our compliance? But then also, like, how well did you behave around men? There's points are awarded or deducted, aren't they, for our behaviour? There are conditions placed on us all the time. And I just thought, actually, I think there is almost a sacred space, even just for a few hours, being able to arrive as a woman, have a great time with other women, and leave feeling great. And that might be a really valuable thing that I, as a practitioner, and not with the same reach as Lizzo, but I'm certainly providing some of that as well, and I want to actually consciously put that in my practice now, like forever.
That's an extraordinary gift.
Well, I don't know if I manage
sisterhood.
it, but it's something I'm trying to do, and hope that sisterhood's like my favourite thing. So yeah, anything that we can that is about sisterhood, I'm like, yeah, I'll try and add to that.
So you talked about Greenham. Tell me about what it was like to go there with your mum as her little girl. How old were you?
I was about 5.
Wow,
I was very little.
a really little girl.
Yeah, really little.
That must have been mind-blowing, was it?
Well, yes,
it's really another universe, wasn't it?
Yeah. So my parents, like loads of other parents, were very frightened about the bomb. Like, I think it was a very visceral fear in the 80s, in the same way that we should still be frightened of it now, but we should also be frightened of, like, the environment and the impact of our behaviour on the environment, or not even particularly individually ours, but the systems which we are in. So they joined CND, and their CND happened to be near Greenham. And at the beginning of Greenham, the CND head office hadn't quite got on board with how great Greenham women were. They were a bit like, they're a bit leery and embarrassing, and I think they might be bringing the side down a bit with their antics. So it was quite often smaller CNDs, often more run by women, local women, that were like, this is great, let's go support them. So then I was like this little girl who became very passionate about that, and the answer that my parents had seemed to make complete sense to me: get rid of nuclear weapons, convince people to get rid of nuclear weapons. In the same way that I was very passionate about adults not smoking, if I met someone at a party who was smoking and I liked the look of them, I'd go and make friends with them and chat away to them and say, "Oh, I'm just so glad. You seem so nice. I'm so concerned because it seems to me that you're smoking. What you perhaps don't realise is that smoking will give you cancer, but it's okay because it will be difficult, but you can give up smoking." And this adult would just be like, "Who the hell is this child?" And I actually even met someone at my aunt's funeral. And he was having quite a bad time, this guy, and he said, "I remember you. You're her niece, aren't you? You told me to stop smoking, and I wish I'd listened to you."
Oh.
I know, he looked like he was in such a bad way. So I was the same with the bum. I was like, we just need to meet as many people as possible, explain it to them in a reasonable way, hand them this flyer, and they will agree with us, and then bombs will be gone. So I was really keen to come out and do my share of the flyering and the things. So I can remember being really told off by a guy, a grown-up, when I was trying to flyer him in town. And then suddenly all these women, seemingly from like everywhere, just swooping in and being like, "Wonderful point, Rebecca, and another thing, sir," and then just being like, "How dare you talk to a little like that? You talk to us if you want to, but well done, dear," And I just thought, "Oh God, thank God, women are wonderful, thank God." So it was this context that then my mum starts to take me to Greenham. We didn't live there, but we did live at other camps for weekends and for short stretches of time. And, it was, again, to me, it felt like sisterhood. Everyone was dead nice to me. They were always women that didn't mind you having a good old question and chat, which you don't always find with adults, particularly I was experiencing with adult men. So I could ask them anything and chat about it, so I loved that. And then you could sit at the side of the road with them. They'd always be sitting around their banners, and cars would come past and either stop and give them supplies or give them a friendly wave as they went by, honk for peace or whatever. Or sometimes they'd throw nasty stuff or they'd shout. And I was just sat there thinking, this is fascinating. This is the adult world. They go by in cars, and some of them are lovely and some of them are really problematic and angry, and it was just like, it was such a lesson. And then there were huge things, like I was part of Embrace the Base. So I remember my mum taking me to that action and holding hands with her on one side and hearing it was like 30,000 women I now know. And it's a 9-mile base, and they held hands all the way around it, rocked some of the fence down. They were amazing. So I could just hear all of this singing, and it just is, it's amazing. And I just remember thinking, my mum's so cool and women are so cool and I'm going to be a woman, this is so great. It was a big package, which I now feel really, it meant that when we were at home, my mum would be decoding fairy stories with me and saying, God, I feel that, she'd be reading, Snow White, and then she'd be like, oh, isn't it just so tedious that we know what she looks like, and then she goes to sleep and it's up to some blokes to save her. And I'd be like...
After doing the housework.
Yeah, after doing housework for years for a bunch of blokes.
For 7 men.
Yeah, exactly. So they'd be like, and then she'd say, what's her reward? Getting married to another bloke. Probably goes to keep a house for him. And so I'm having all these feminist revelations and things at 5.
This is unbelievable.
Yeah, it was really, really handy. It just got me started early, And she was working really hard to get me, she's like, we're not reading this bosh anymore. I'm going to get you some better storybooks, and finding me fairy tales from all over the world. And she didn't just take away, she put in. Because it doesn't make people feel like there's any point changing if it's all just bad news and negative.
So your project that you're in the middle of doing now, Greenham Women Everywhere.
Yeah.
What inspired that?
Well,
apart from all the amazing stuff that you've just told me.
All the stuff about my mum.
Why now?
So 8 years ago, my mum died. And then someone else that I knew quite well from being on CND Elect myself when I moved to London as a younger woman. Helen John, who's the person who died.
I've met Helen John.
I mean, what the force of nature doesn't even cover it, does it?
Oh my God.
Formidable woman. So
yeah.
she was a big part of obviously setting Greenham up and being Greenham. And then she was gone. And then I was talking to other women, and they didn't know anything about Greenham. So anyone younger than me definitely didn't know anything about it. Hadn't even heard of it. And then I was talking to people who were doing their degrees in social history, and there's no women's studies anymore, and no one was even studying Greenham. It wasn't part of social history. It's not coming up in women. There isn't so much women's history around anymore because those courses are all gone.
Because we fixed it all.
Exactly. Because half the population of the world is is still having a great time. I was just like, this is going to go, and I'm just like, that is an outrageous piece of cultural robbery. And actually a very considered piece of erasure of feminist women's lesbian and socialist history. It's one of the most profound, wide-reaching pieces of feminist and lesbian-led activism, certainly since suffrage. It's outrageous that would be lost to us, and it would not happen if it was the same thing and it had been run by men. It would not be. We would all be talking about it all the time. So I joined up with this wonderful woman called Kate Caro, who I'd been at drama school with, so we had the background in appreciating how patriarchy sometimes is pretty sucky. And we'd stayed very good friends, and she runs something brilliant called the Heroine Collective, which I really urge anyone listening to go and have a look at the Heroine Collective. It's great. She's a writer, but she teaches sometimes, she was teaching at the time to supplement her beginning of her writing career. And she was like, where are all the women when I'm teaching? I'm teaching, vast swathes of history here, and I can't find any women in any of the books. So she basically has done this amazing online resource where all of the women you might ever want to know did anything in any field. So I was like, she'd be a great person to do this project with. And we basically set out to interview as many Greenham women as well as we could. I suppose at the time we thought, having done previous projects with interviewees, we were thinking, if we could get 20 or 30, that would be amazing, We were deluged with women, but we had to cap it at around 100 voices, which is over 200 hours of original audio. And that's all on its own website now. And there was a little pop-up tour that went with it, and some lovely sound design by Sarah Llewellyn. And that was its own project. So we got some more funding from the Heritage Lottery. They'd funded the original project to do a project that now sees us trying to find other audience for that archive, but in the most fun ways. So we're working with Jackie Fleming on a board game. She's been illustrating that, which is so exciting. Then we're working with Falmouth Film School, making video games with the animation and the gaming department.
Oh, I love that.
I know, cooperative gaming, but it has to be feminist and it has to be cooperative.
Oh, that's great.
So it's just so exciting.
Because you've got the Jeopardy right in the middle of it already.
Yeah, we'll see what they come up with. It's very exciting. And then we've been commissioned to write a book out of the archive, so an anecdotal history using the voices in the archive. We've made an a wonderful practitioner called L.H. Travail, who's just really a really gifted person. They've made a choose your own adventure, but you follow it online. You can get to it through a web link, and it's this beautiful, it's like a fireside. It says, you're talking to so and so. Which of the women would you like to talk to? About 6 of them, and it just meanders through their answers, taken verbatim from their interviews and testimonies again. And I'm trying to, I'm working with people to try and get a documentary made because it's the 40-year anniversary next year. So then I got really ambitious about what could we do next year to try and create a big response, where people all over the country can find out about Greenham, be inspired by Greenham, apply activism to their own lives, and then maybe, hopefully, in September next year, join us on a march, recreating the first march that goes from Cardiff all the way to Greenham.
Oh, that's amazing.
Party on Greenham Common. I don't know if it will happen, but that's what I'm trying to work towards. But yeah, it's a very interesting world to be a conduit for.
So, you've been keeping yourself very busy on top of all your other projects and Greenham Women Everywhere, entertaining us with the wonderful Salon de la Vie. Is this the stage for it by any chance?
This is the Secret Garden. So the first season was all in London, and then we got here, and I can't bear to go inside ever. Well, I'm here because after the London lockdown, I've been a bit like, oh my God, the air and the sea. So anyway, we were like, let's do it outside. And, so you do get seagulls and you do get wind noise and this, but it just feels worth it. And also, the first ones were funded by Feast, which was great. And I was like, I just feel like I've been doing storytelling, and I was like, I could just do 20 minutes, once a fortnight on just this great person. This is a great woman for you. So I just did that as this kind of little celebratory blast. And some of the people that we're covering, particularly in this season, which is all about black women, I'm working with my friend Cudsy on it. We're just doing a one about Nina Simone. So there are lots of these women that are incredibly brave and were punished for their bravery. And I want to be able to not shy away from that, but also still leave you feeling like you've celebrated them.
Mm-hmm. And just on a slightly lighter note, I was intrigued by the different drinks. Did you settle on a favourite?
I think part of the problem with the drinks is that I like a drink, and I struggle to settle on a favourite even for one night. I'm a terrible flirt with alcohol. It turns out it's my other love. So I love making cocktails and things. So I think one of the things that theatre and storytelling brings people together, and having a drink brings people together. So I thought, again, for that in that rush of moment when I first got the funding, I was like, what are we all missing? I miss having a drink with people in the bar after a show. I miss making cocktails for my friends. So maybe we all make our cocktails at home and then I drink one as well. And maybe that's a way of being connected. And then I thought, I don't want to make everyone just be like an alcoholic though either. And I don't want people who don't drink to feel like they're excluded. So I now do some that have alcohol, and then I'll do another one that's like, you know, some sort of cold brew tea, or like I try to make it like something we can share that isn't totally destructive on the liver. Although those are my favourite drinks.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is Kapow, which is this absolutely fantastic consortium of women in Cornwall celebrating the creative greatness of women. I think that's my shorthand version.
That's how they'd like to be described, definitely. Yeah, we like that.
Yeah. So I was there at the first meeting and saw you performing, and it was on a boat in Truro. And
yeah, that was a great meeting, wasn't it?
The room just felt so full of love, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. It was really exciting. Yeah. The thing with Kapow is that it's a little conglomerate of individual practitioners who are all really busy and who've partly gone, God, what, you know, we're so busy and we're facing some challenges that every artist or every person faces, and some challenges that are very specific to us being women. And, you know, in some cases, I think we all have felt like our career is slower and taking longer in areas where we watch men perhaps go ahead faster. And, you know, whether that's perception or reality, I personally think it's reality. We all certainly feel like we've observed that in our careers. So what you've got is, I think, a really nice dynamic 6 women who really care about other women, but you've also got 6 really busy women. So I think it's taken us a while to capitalise on that love, on that potential from that first meeting. Funnily enough, in some ways, lockdown obviously stopped everything, but it also fast-forwarded some things. Definitely in my practice, the salons and the Greenham stuff, I think, suddenly bumped forward exponentially. Some of the stuff that I was doing, I would never have got around to for years, I don't think, if it hadn't been for lockdown. And it definitely, I think, fast-forwarded Kapow. Suddenly we were able to have the meetings between the 6 of us that we needed to have to get to know each other, to work stuff out and to create our dynamic. And then we got some funding to do this flash mob.
Yes, I did that. It was
that felt like that really
lovely.
Good. I'm really glad you think so, because I felt like it was
best night I've had with Friday night I've ever had with a laptop. I think
that's a lovely way of putting it. We should have that on our logos.
So for me, Kapow is just part of what inspired me to make the Cornwall Woman podcast, because there are so many women, particularly in Cornwall, it's noticeable, who are pioneering, trying to do the thing that they really want to do with great integrity, as well as living the wonderful life that many of us are lucky enough to be able to do so here. So I think it's a really wonderful movement.
I'd love to see projects where we can be bringing all of that. That's a really powerful energy, and you're right, if we don't utilise that, that's a bit of a waste, isn't it? Because I think we are, again, like, it's another thing that's unique about Cornwall and its practice, you know, it's got these amazing, really kick-ass women. That's really exciting.
Yeah, it is. It is. So you have talked about the wonderful uniqueness of theatre in Cornwall. Could you do what you do if you lived somewhere else?
If what I'd done was stick at being an actor, I could have an acting career down here, or I could have had it in London or wherever I was based. You'd sort of have that where you were. But this particular thing that I've ended up doing, whatever this is, whatever it is to be the artist Rebecca Mordan, the person Rebecca Mordan, the activist Rebecca Mordan, whatever she is, running Scary Little Girls, which is a real hodgepodge as well, and a production company and a theatre company and a melting pot and all sorts of different bits and pieces, really. That couldn't happen if I wasn't. It's so specific to my love of not just one thing. There's loads of things about my own practice that wouldn't be there if I hadn't grown up here. There are loads of people that I collaborate with I would never know if I hadn't grown up here, and if I didn't still work here. It wouldn't be possible for this company to have evolved this way, or this person, me speaking, to have evolved this way if I hadn't grown up here.
So do you have a favourite place in Cornwall? This is a hard question, I know.
Oh, wow. I want to be really romantic and tell you some secret wonderful thing, and obviously, like, God, you're spot for choice. But honestly, literally this is my favourite place in Cornwall. This is the house that I grew up in, and then my only brother was born, and then my mum became ill and she died in this house, having made this amazing garden and wanting to be here, and just only wanting to be here to have her good death. I just love it, and I think the whole house is infused with her good life and honestly with her good death as well. Yeah, I feel really moved and simultaneously deeply moved and deeply at home here. So I'm very lucky. That's really lucky, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But absolutely wonderful that you treasure it.
Yeah, I do. It's an amazing thing.
And my last question to you is, what does being a Cornwall woman mean to you?
Being a Cornish woman is everything that you take away with you that Cornwall's given you. It's the sea, it's in you, it's the rhythm of nature, it's the space, it's the collective power of the struggle of a rurally under-resourced people who've been ripped off century after century. And I'm very fortunate. I think being a Cornish woman means power and space and struggle and glory. And I'm proud to be a part of that sisterhood and that lineage.
Rebecca Mordan, thank you so much for being one of my Cornwall women.
Thank you very much for asking me to. I'm very proud.
Oh, it's a fantastic, fantastic conversation.
Thank you. It was really nice to have with you.
It was great to spend time with such a motivated woman, with her perfect balance of integrity and fun. I've put links to all her projects on the show notes, including the current series of Salon de la Vie. Mine's a margarita. In the next episode, I'm back in Falmouth, talking to international sportswoman and Black Lives Matter activist Yasmin Fosu. If you haven't already, then do subscribe to Cornwall Woman, wherever you're listening to this now, and please spread the word among the Cornwall women in your circle. And let me know on Instagram or Twitter, @Cornwall Woman, what makes you a Cornwall woman. And thank you for listening.